Welcome to Hull on Estates, a series of podcasts for the Canadian legal community dealing with issues and insights surrounding estate planning in Canada. Hosted by the lawyers of Hull and Hull, the podcast will touch on some key considerations when planning estates and wills. Now, here are today's hosts.
Hi, I'm Nick Eskerbauer.
I'm Mandana Nikneja.
Welcome to Hull on Estates. You're listening to episode number 708. And today we're going to be talking about client contingency planning. But first, as you can see, we're in the holiday season, joined here by Mandana today. And we're talking about an issue that is sort of top of mind as we're getting into the holiday season, when a lot of us are taking expected holidays, expected time out of the office. What happens to clients? What happens to lawyers when we end up taking an unexpected absence from the office, whether it's temporary or permanent?
That's right. As you know, life can happen. People get sick. They may get mentally incapacitated at some point. People pass away. Lawyers are people too, and we need to think about what's going to happen to our clients in those circumstances.
Exactly. So, our population is aging. We're seeing lawyers getting older. As we get older, there are higher incidences of mental capacity issues. People may pass away unexpectedly. And when that happens, a lot of the time, clients only find out after a limitation period has expired, after a court date or a court deadline has been missed without anything happening. And what happens is they end up suffering a loss. And they may be left in a situation where they ultimately end up making a claim against their lawyer or that lawyer's estate because there was no plan in place for what would happen in the case that something unexpected like that may happen.
All right.
So until recently, many law societies across Canada, many in the United States and other parts of the world, have strongly encouraged lawyers to have client contingency plans in place. But in Ontario, at least, that hasn't been mandatory. Now, what we're seeing in January 2025, so beginning in just a few weeks, depending on when you're watching this, it might have been a week or two ago, but we want to make sure everyone knows about this change happening effective January 1st to the bylaws of the Law Society, Bylaw 7.1, that's going to require all Ontario lawyers in private practice to have a contingency plan in place for what's going to happen exactly in that situation, where the lawyer is unexpectedly absent from the office because of capacity issues, because they've passed away, and really something there to help protect not only their clients who may be prejudiced by their unexpected absence, but that client and that client's estate, so that they aren't leaving their families in a situation where they need to defend or deal with claims that are being made as a result of deadlines that have passed and other issues that have come up.
Right. So, Nick, do you want to talk a little bit about what is the contingency plan?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So the changes to the Law Society's bylaws don't mandate any specific form of contingency planning. So we've still got quite a bit of flexibility there, but we can talk a bit about the types of documents that might form part of this plan.
Right. So it can be done in several ways, right? It can, during your lifetime, you can have a partnership or even shareholder agreement that will have the terms that anticipate what is going to happen in the event that one of the partners or shareholders pass away or become incapacitated.
And I think we should pause there too to point out too, of course, for some of us who are working at larger offices, this isn't going to be a problem really that each lawyer individually is dealing with. If I'm unexpectedly out of the office tomorrow, Mandana or one of my other colleagues will pick things up and make sure we're not missing a deadline. We've got systems in place for that already. But so many Ontario lawyers, about a third, are sole practitioners. And so they're the ones where really we see problems arise most frequently.
That's right. And going back to what kind of plans they can come up with, they can do it maybe through estate planning documents, like what we do for our assets and for maybe for children. We can do the same thing for our businesses.
Absolutely. So as part of the Law Society resources, which we'll get into in a bit as well, we'll talk a bit more about them. But there's even a template continuing power of attorney for property. And the idea is that that's a document that comes into effect during a period of incapacity. And there's even the ability for a lawyer to use a separate power of attorney that's going to deal with the assets of their practice, so that they're authorizing a replacement lawyer. We like to use the terms planning lawyer, replacement lawyer, but that there's a replacement lawyer who's going to have the authority to manage their practice when they're no longer able to work. And the same can be done with wills. I mean, we often see clients in situations where there are assets that for which a certificate of appointment isn't required. So we'll have a primary will, a secondary will, a tertiary will. A separate will can be used to administer the assets of a law practice and to authorize another lawyer to carry on our practice if that's the intention, or otherwise to get access to things long enough to make sure none of these big problems arise, and to make sure everything's wound up properly, efficiently.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because you may not want to have your personal and private information in your will that is going to be used for handling of your practice. So you can keep those separated that way.
Absolutely. So planning documents, that's a big component of a contingency plan. Another really important component, of course, being discussion. When we're dealing with ordinary estate planning, ordinary contingency planning, we know how important it is to tell those individuals who we want to be administering our assets after we pass away or while we're incapable, letting them know that we've selected them, they're named in a document, making sure they're open to taking on that role, they're ready for it, and of course explaining what the role is expected to entail, what the wishes are, and because as much as you can write in a document that's intended to set up the plan, in order to actually see it implemented seamlessly, which is what you need to avoid missing some of these key deadlines, you need to make sure you're having those discussions with the people who are going to be involved in the planning as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. As we see in our practice, there are several people with in the role of attorney for property or state trustee that they have accepted their role, but beforehand they were not really aware of the extent of their role or what it really comprises of. So
they've been named at all.
Yeah, exactly. So they might end up having a lot of confusion about this role, which is not good for your clients.
No.
Yeah.
So why don't we go through, Mandana, a few possible checklist questions that can help someone get started with this whole idea of client contingency planning. If we don't even know yet, do we have a plan that's going to comply with these new rules? What should we consider first?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the first step is to consider if this issue is already addressed. If there is a partnership agreement, shareholder agreement, state planning that addresses this issue. But if not, next step will be to look around you or in your community to see if there is a lawyer with a similar level of expertise as you, preferably in the proximity of like a close proximity that your client can reach them easily to name them as the replacement lawyer.
Exactly, and that's something that hopefully these days has become a little bit easier, because in the past, especially dealing with smaller communities, if you needed a lawyer who needed to be present there in the office for in-person meetings to review documents, hard copy documents, it could be hard to find someone local who doesn't have conflicts with on a number of the matters that they're going to be assisting on. Now, of course, with Zoom meetings, still Zoom court in many jurisdictions, depending on what the subject matter is, and a lot of paperless office systems like ours, even though we've got a couple papers in front of us right now, it's hopefully becoming a bit easier to find people who are able to take on the role, even though they might not be located down the street.
That's right. And as you mentioned, the next step would be to consider if the replacement lawyer has even, consented to the role. That's I think a very important step, because if not, you have to consider having other options.
Absolutely. Another point to consider and to reconsider is whether the replacement lawyer that's been selected is a lawyer in good standing with the Law Society. Are they a current licensee? If they should retire at some point in the future, if they should have other issues involving their license, the plan is going to have to be updated to have a new replacement lawyer ready to step in.
That's right. And as you mentioned, documents are necessary to be prepared. The replacement lawyer needs documents giving them authority to act on your behalf. So that would be your next step on your checklist. And other than the documents, you have to make sure if there are other practical steps that need to be taken. We were talking about this the other day. Like, for example, if your files are password protected, you need to make sure the replacement lawyer will have access to your files. Or, for example, another important issue is your trust accounts. The replacement lawyer needs to know like which banks do you have accounts with, and how do they access those accounts.
Exactly, and really we need to break it down and think about every little point that might arise in a situation where someone is suddenly stepping into the shoes of the planning lawyer. So do you know where the office is? Do you know how to get in? Do you know the staff? Do you know how to reach the staff? Is there a guide? Is this information located somewhere? Is it going to be provided in advance? Is it just going to be there and ready for the replacement lawyer to step in or not?
And the next step that is, in our experience, very important step is that your contingency planning documents have they been reviewed by an experienced state lawyer or employment lawyer?
Yeah, there are a lot of people who we might want to consult, especially if we aren't so sure what should our client contingency plan look like. State lawyers for sure. I know my partners Ian and Susanna have both spoken extensively on the idea and best practice of client contingency planning for quite a lot of times. So from the beginning of when the Law Society was first recommending it, and so of course people like them are a great resource, and employment lawyers too, because I mean, the replacement lawyer and the planning lawyer are going to have to turn their minds to things like, if there are staff, what happens, and how are those staff going to be paid? Is how life insurance is one idea for how you can deal with compensation of people in a situation like this. And I guess the last point too that maybe should be considered is whether excess insurance with WAPRO or otherwise be obtained in order to assist with one of these plans and to really best protect the lawyer and the lawyer's estate and make sure that this isn't a problem that family members are going to be left dealing with down the road. So I think, I mean, we've covered a lot of issues. This is a lot of information, but where can we go to find more information, more detailed, granular information?
So right now, LSO has a good amount of checklists and templates and guidelines on their website. If you need more, there are references to other organizations like LawPro, Clio, OBA. They all have very good templates and guidelines on this issue right now that you can find on LSO website.
Great. So we'll include a link to that resource landing page just so that everyone's able to find it.
Yeah.
Really great resources there. It's been comprehensively updated. There have been resources there for over a decade on contingency planning, and now there's some real thorough, well thought out checklists and information for people there. And for those of us who might struggle to find a replacement lawyer ready to step in, it is also indicated that trustee services can be contacted and might be available to act in that capacity, as might other lawyers in our networks. As a reminder, of course, this comes into effect January 1st, 2025. However, we understand that it's going to be reported on our annual reports for 2025, which are due at the end of March 2026. So we do have maybe a little bit of leeway here to set up our plans to make sure they are all ready to go. But definitely something like we encourage clients to do towards the end of the year to get our ducks in a row. It's something I think each of us need to take a look at and make sure we're ready for the new LSO requirements.
Yeah, sure. Also, it's better to be ready for, to deal with the unexpected. The sooner we are prepared and have a plan in place, the better.
Exactly. Well, I think that concludes our podcast. Until next time, we want to thank you for listening. I'm Nick Eskerbauer.
And Mandana Niknajad.
Should you have any questions, please email us at info@hollandhall.com or contact us through the contact page on our website. Thank you and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
This has been Hull on Estates with the lawyers of Hull and Hull. The podcast you have been listening to has been provided as an information service. It is a summary of current legal issues in estates and estate planning. It is not legal advice, and you are reminded to always talk with a legal professional regarding your specific circumstances. To listen to other podcasts or to leave a question or comment, please visit our website at hullandhull.com. Our theme music is Upper Structure by DJ A Kid and is courtesy of the PodSafe Music Network.